Kings Island is a park that always seems to be getting love from coaster enthusiasts. Even with the removal of Vortex and Firehawk, the park compensates with Orion, and the lineup of 14 roller coasters is better than most parks in the country. But how do these rides fit amongst themselves? Here is my full rankings of all the roller coasters at Kings Island. A quick note, my first visit to the park was this season, so you will not be seeing any defunct roller coasters like Vortex here, since I did not have the chance to ride them. So let's begin. Starting with the Kiddie Coaster, the Great Pumpkin Coaster is the only credit I did not ride. The E&F Myler creation is exactly what you'd expect, and it's a good fit for the bottom of this list. Moving to the family coasters, we have Flying Ace Aerial Chase, a first-generation family suspended coaster from Vekoma. Honestly, it didn't hurt like I kind of expected it to, but it didn't really do anything either. The one train capacity also seems like a pretty big miss here for a family ride. Then, only one spot over on my overall list as well, we have Woodstock Express, which is a small-scale PTC wooden coaster. And while it's more fun than Flying Aces, the mini trains make it pretty uncomfortable for anyone that's pretty slightly tall. A perfect first wooden coaster for kids before they graduate to racer later on, but still a kiddie coaster. Maybe a bit of a controversial placement here, but Invertigo comes in at number 11. The Boomerang model is definitely overplayed and overcloned, but this type is a little different and it's definitely my favorite. The ride isn't too shaky and it supplies some nice forces. Only real killer here are those huge restraints that you can't avoid hitting your ears that really kind of ruin the experience for me. Then we have a surprise enjoyment ride for me, which was Adventure Express. Now this is easily my favorite mine chain from Arrow, and while it definitely can beat you up to a degree, the absolute enjoyment is a step above the normal mine trains. Not to mention the lift back to the station and other theming elements are really awesome. I just wish we had some kind of drop after all that build up with the moving statues and chanting. Next up is probably one of my favorite family coasters, Backlot Stunt Coaster. Now, I've ridden the clone at King's Dominion, but this time I got the full experience with all the effects go along with the night ride. Now, it has a surprisingly intense helix and fun moments throughout that anyone can really enjoy. It's much better than most small-scale roller coasters. And now we can begin with the really major attractions. The park's opening coaster is the wooden dueling ride, the Racer. Now the park has done some major track work to this ride in the off-season, and it's decently smooth. Some fun floater over the camelbacks, and the racing aspects lift this ride to just outside my top 50, but it's still pretty basic and it still has some spots that run rough. Now at number 7 we have the Bat, one of the 5 remaining Arrow suspended coasters left, and it was awesome. The other 2 I've ridden are Big Bad Wolf at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which is now defunct, and Iron Dragon at Cedar Point. Now I was a little worried that this would be more on the tame side like Iron Dragon, and when these coasters don't swing like crazy, they feel like glorified family rides. That being said, this is definitely more extreme, with 2 moments of pure whip. You have that flyby turn and then into the station. In the front train, the turns really feel like they go beyond 90 degrees as well. Now, while it's a short ride, it has some really standout elements, and it sits at 51 on my overall list, 1 spot behind the Wolf. Then we have the absolute legend of the park, the world's longest wooden roller coaster by a large margin, the Beast. Roaming the woods of Rivertown since 1979, this ride is wild as the trains fly through this course and this setting. It isn't smooth by any means, and the in-house ride definitely feels janky with its transitions that can throw you into those PTC trains. Specifically, the tilt and the turn into that final helix are nuts, and it really needs to be prepped for. But it is that moment that stands out as the trains feel like they're going insanely fast, gonna fly off the tracks and roaring through that tunnel. Add in a night ride that only amplifies the setting, tunnels, and that extreme out-of-control feeling, and this is an entertaining ride, but some will love and some will hate. It ends up at 44 overall for me, and 6th on this list. Another clone rolls into the top 5. The launched indoor coaster from Premier, Flight of Fear, has some great theming and an entertaining ride experience. The clone spaghetti bowl layout is intense, and while it does nearly stop on the mid-course, it feels so fast by the end of the course. This is my 3rd of the clones and the 2nd indoor style, and it's my favorite of the 3. The small lighting inside helps lean into those elements a bit and just feels a little bit smoother than the other 2. Only real con here are still those shin restraints, but I'll take that awesome launch and inversions. This reaches 35 overall. And now for the first of the 3 monster B&Ms. All 3 are extremely close and offer some different ride experiences. Leading off at 4 is Diamondback, perhaps the strongest airtime I've ever felt off a B&M coaster. Every hill drops and yanks riders who are in their seats, and it's quite sustained. Even the trimmed airtime hill feels it. However, this is also probably the roughest B&M hyper I've ever ridden. The drop and first Camelback specifically stuck out with significant rattle that really took a lot out of the enjoyment of those back row wing seats. Now the middle seats were definitely smoother, however towards the front of the train is probably the best bet. If this ride was typical B&M smooth, it'd probably be in the top 2 of the park and my favorite hyper. But unfortunately, it's just too hard to overlook how bad that rattle was. If you want to get a little wet also, take the back wing seat. This sits 19th overall on my list. Then moving to the other side of the spectrum, we have Orion, the new for 2020 B&M Giga Coaster. Now this ride is so much smoother than the other B&Ms in the park, and it offers sustained floater airtime and incredible speed. Specifically that speed hill and drop stand out as the iconic moments of the ride, but the length of the coaster feels like it was made on a budget of a hyper. It's barely longer than Diamondback. That being said, it has the edge for height, speed, smoothness, and some theming, which all add a little bit more than simply better airtime from Diamondback. This was easily the closest to of the list, and Orion lands at 18th overall, only 1 spot higher than Diamondback. The final B&M and the world's longest inverted roller coaster comes in at number 2. Banshee suffers much of the same Diamondback rattle issue in the back, where combined with the intensity make it very hard to handle. However, that front row experience on this coaster is nearly unmatched. I've learned that I have a soft spot for these large scale inverts, and I haven't been shy about my Alpengeist love in the past, but this tops the Busch Gardens coaster for my favorite invert. The biggest pros here are the inversion count and the pacing. No mid-course means that this flies through each element relentlessly, and it doesn't really let you catch your breath at all until you hit the brakes. And now it's as intense as you can want in a ride, and those vest restraints remove the threat of headbanging through those sharp transitions. Now, I feel like they're comfy, and I think they get too much hate. I don't really have any complaints about them. This comes in at 12 overall and barely misses my top 10. Finally, at number 1, we have the 2017 Gci Mystic Timbers. Somehow, this 109-foot wooden coaster tops the 3 monster steel coasters, and honestly, I don't think it's all that close either. Each and every hill throws riders up, and the pacing makes it feel like each rider is making jump cuts through the woods as the trains power through the course. Now, it isn't overly long, but it doesn't really feel short either. This turnaround in the tunnel is a nice addition, and the wooded setting makes just for the best night rides. Now, the ride is as smooth as a wooden coaster can be, and you pair that with the laterals, ejector, and pacing, and there really isn't anything this coaster is missing. Maybe it could use a couple extra elements towards the end, but even the shed's theming acts as a final small touch that boosts this ride up. Really, this is a perfectly designed coaster that sometimes gets overrated by being called mild, when it's really anything but. This climbs all the way to 6th on my overall list, topping rides like Candemonium and Millennium Force. So that's going to wrap up this list, but I want to hear your opinions below. I love being able to open up discussions with everyone and see what everyone else thinks. So for full reviews of Orion and Mystic Timbers, check out the coaster reviews on the playlist, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos. Till next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.